everyone. Let us travel back in time. 26 years ago, what was I doing? I was just a scrawny schoolboy playing hockey for my school. And that's me in the center of the picture next to the person in a white t-shirt. So for us who were playing hockey or used to play hockey on grass, artificial turf, which came with an automatic watering system, was a really advanced thing for us. And Delta Sports Complex, this space here, was the first place in Singapore that installed such a playing surface and system. So little did I know that 36 years later, I would return and be involved in the rejuvenation of what is by now a rather old building, and a place where I actually spent some of my most memorable moments growing up. That is my story, just a short one, right? And the city has many of such stories. As people interact in the city, experience the spaces together, buildings become places with meaning. You can say that the city is a built record of time past, right? And it's captured in the forms and spaces, right? So to work with the city is like to work with the archives, these archives of human stories. However, with time, many things change, and regardless of the people who have passed through, the city can easily pass a place by and leave it behind. So how do we make sure that a building remains implicated in the city, intertwined, inseparable? I believe that it is really about the connections that this building has to the city. I will first show some examples of these vital connections between buildings or buildings to the city by means of its passages or by overlapping spaces. And then I will use these observations, second part of the lecture, to talk about two old buildings, how to preserve them and how to make them relevant for today and tomorrow. Other than running Red Bean Architects, I'm also serving as the chief editor of the Singapore Architect. And in the magazine, we have a section called Folio, where we use drawings to highlight topics and to try to probe a little deeper into them. So the next set of drawings, series of drawings, were published in issue number 7, titled Urbanism in Suburbia, where I was trying to tease out the urban qualities in this city of ours, this very pristine and green city of ours. Where is the urban juice? Right, this is Sim Lim Square, a retail hub for computers and gadgets, completed in 1987. And of course, there's a shopping atrium, and in the basement one, there's a food court, there's a car park that passes into a food court, and the food court slides out into the space of the pedestrianized mall, Albert Mall. Some pictures of this space. You can see through the section that the shopping atrium is made more continuous with the space of the street. The next case study is in the east of Singapore, between East Coast Road and Marine Parade Road, or rather between East Coast Road and Marine Parade Town Centre, and there is this second-story connection that links up a series of buildings and crosses two major roads, starting from the shophouses along East Coast Road. Overhead bridge links into Roxy Square 1, which by virtue of its site is basically a long double-loaded corridor of small shop units. And then it passes into Roxy Square 2, which is more of an atrium building. So as a pedestrian, you will have more options to circulate, but eventually they merge and emerge into a very long overhead bridge over Marine Parade Road, which then punches into the second story of Block 87 of Marine Parade Town Centre, which is a HDB-owned building filled with commercial tenants like tuition centres and so on. And finally, with the escalator, it drops down to a town square. So the red parts are either staircases or escalators. So for those of you who know this place, I happen to live around the east, so that bridge is no longer there. Right now, the Thomson East Coast Line is under construction. And the crossing of Marine Parade Road will now be replaced by underpass integrated with the MRT station. And where the second story connection used to end, in Block 87, which is a lower building in this picture, where it lands on the ground as this town square. And next to it, there is a very strong building, Parkway Builders Center. It is by Architect Tenggara. And it features a glass atrium that runs the full height of the building, a naturally ventilated atrium. By the design of the glass enclosure, it draws air in from its bottom and then expels it on the top. And also by its design, it allows space to be seamlessly connected to the town square. This building has character, is strong, but at the same time, it's seamlessly connected. And last, a new building by RSP is Waterway Point in Punggol. It's basically a shopping mall with in a podium with 11, I think it's 11 condominium towers on top of the podium. And the nice thing about this is Punggol MRT leads to a promenade that runs through the shopping podium, goes down 1 or 2 floors, and ends all the way in next to the river, Punggol River. And it's designed for, it's not just a small corridor, it's designed for double volume and 6 meters wide and so on. So when we have to work with an old building, what do we do? I think there are 2 things. The first is to precisely identify the conditions and surrounding context that has changed around this building. The second is to figure out the connections of this building to other buildings, this building to the city. I've gone past. Yeah, people always talk about an old building being run down, and so you should tear it down, right? That is decrepit. But what really keeps the building relevant are the connections that link this building to the city, and what keeps bringing it, it's human traffic, and that keeps the building alive. Right? It's not really about the object itself. And if you realize this, however, you also realize or arrive at the idea that one can just as well contrive to make a building irrelevant by routing pathways away from the building or by situating transportation nodes far away. Can be done. My point is that to really keep a building relevant, it takes more than one party. It's really a collective effort, right? You cannot just leave it to the owners of one building. I think everyone, the community, the agencies, the people around, the neighbors need to kind of be in the effort because it really works together. So the other sports complex, coming back to it. The sports complex in Singapore has several origins. The first is the private club, set up by local or expatriate communities. Examples are Singapore Swimming Club or Chinese Swimming Club at Amber Road, Indian Association along Balestier, hockey also. Singapore Cricket Club set up by expatriates at the Padang. And in the mid-50s, there were also public swimming pools set up by the state, and they were very, very popular, such as Yankit Swimming Complex and River Valley Swimming Complex. One thing to note is that the sporting space has never been just a space solely for exercising and keeping fit, but it's always also a space for the community. And there's a book by Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, you can read it. In the late 90s, Singapore started to be more conscious about sporting excellence. Prior to that, it was really about keeping the people fit, which if you think about it, is really clever because it just reduces the healthcare burden of the state. But sportsmen winning medals can also give national pride and identity, right? And it could be the beginning of another niche industry. Sport in this time of Singapore's history became worthy. And more professional venues were set up. And rather than relying on the accidental talent, Singapore became very strategic about nurturing talents, starting from the schools to the national sports associations. But as this was happening, the mission to keep a population active was not forgotten. You know Active SG, right? You have apps and you have a $100 subsidy for Singaporeans, and you can go and use the gym or the swimming complex. So through the apps and the subsidies, they are the software to complement all these new spanking facilities and advanced facilities that come up for both athletes and the general public. And Delta was built in 1979. At that time, there were more competitive venues, or rather less competitive venues. And so Delta was also used for competitions. And you can see from the picture at the top that the seats are quite full. Right? So for a venue that used to be both a competitive venue as well as a community venue, when it came to the 90s and 2000s, it lost part of its importance. But we believe that Delta in the future remains relevant as an attraction to the neighborhood. You can see that the lower picture, right, the gallery is quite empty now. But it's the things like the badminton courts are still very popular. And so, thankfully, the agencies, Sports Singapore, Sports SG, decided to retain and rejuvenate rather than to demolish. Elsewhere, other older places such as Bedok Swimming Complex, shown here, are not so fortunate for many reasons, of course. One of them being they are subject to broader narratives such as whole of government interagency integration and intensification of land, or rather optimization of land use. Part B at Bedok is replacing Bedok Swimming Complex, and it also includes the library, the polyclinic, and many other agencies. So this is a site plan of Delta. I'm only going to show one project today, and the second one is more speculative. This is a site plan. Alexandra Road is to the north, and Tiong Bahru Road is to the south. The east-west MRT track, if you saw my timeline just now, it came up in 8 years after Delta was opened. So it basically cut off Tiong Bahru Road from the original entrance of the swimming complex. Thank you. So the scheme is to, next slide, yeah? Okay, thank you. So the scheme is to really make this space accessible on all sides, and it's a really exciting site because it's got context on all sides. And along to Alexandra Road, we want to make the facade more transparent to show people the activities inside the sports center to attract them. To the HDB estate to the east, we want to make a plaza, an elevated plaza, you will see in the perspective later, to connect better to the HDB estate. To the west, we are limited by the reserve site, but it is still possible to make a better, more engaged pedestrian approach from the MRT station. And to Tiong Bahru Road, of course, the MRT track presents a very hard edge, and that's something we really want to overcome. So what used to be 3 facilities that seem to operate rather independently? You know, if you come and play badminton, you won't really go over to the swimming pool. We want to make it into one integrated center, and the instrument to do this is via a second-story bridge that starts from the other side of Tiong Bahru Road, where there's a Red Hill Market, to bring right through into the swimming pool, overlooking the swimming pool, going past it and along the hockey pitch, also on the second story, and then ending at the badminton hall. This is the plan from 1979, and you can see on the Tiong Bahru side, there's a road that comes right in. Right? So it really had a frontage. And you notice the tiered seats in the sports hall and the spectator stand. In the new plan, working from left to right, the other thing is that there is a lay-by that comes in from Alexandra Road, right, that actually cuts the sports hall from the bus stop. And in this scheme, in our proposal, we are paving it, taking away the driveway, and by taking away the tiered seats, we are making a cafe and also a main entrance that comes right in from the bus stop, Alexandra Road. Also for the hockey stadium, we are taking away the tiered seats and then increasing the capacity by putting in 4 futsal courts or 2 hockey 5 pitches. And the swimming pool side, or rather on the second story first, you can see the bridge coming in from Tiong Bahru Road, coming in, overlooking, and then going along and all the way landing on the sports hall side. And on the third story, our main formal addition is this thing that pivots, right, from the main axis to look over to the other side of the MRT track. Isometric. Okay, you see what the form does by kind of twisting to the 45-degree. It actually avoids the main concrete structure that is coming out from the underground. Quickly run through some perspectives. The opaque wall and what we're doing, what we're proposing with the dance studio, and also the tiered seats taken out affords us that entrance, the frontage. This is facing an HDB estate. We are going to take away the third story slab, leaving the second story and the roof, opening up all the walls to create this elevated plaza accessible by a long ramp. And what used to be the hockey stadium seats, we are keeping the top landing and reconfigure it as a bridge that links the two sides. This is going to be the approach for people who drive at the swimming complex. The project is now in procurement process, and you can take everything as provisional because I hope it will be built as like that as it is now, but you never know, with the procurement process. Okay, while the next, Delta is a real project underway by Red Bean Architects. Golden Mile Complex, this next project I'm going to talk about is a paper project. The project is, or rather the building is under threat. The owners have reached an 80% consensus to take it to the market, looking for an owner to buy over it, and the obvious solution we know in the industry is to tear it down and rebuild something. I'm part of a group of people lobbying URA to gazette this. What we've done is we've started a letter and we've approached the public for signatures, and we have submitted it to the minister. And so the case is being evaluated now. The idea is that it can get en bloc. Okay, it will put it under a new owner's hands. We're okay with that, right? But the conserved building will be the center of the redevelopment effort. And the new owner will be able to reconfigure, reprogram, update the finishes and so on. So this used to be called Woh Hup Complex, built in 1973 by DP. I think we are quite familiar with it. On the seaward facing side, the sloping terrace affords panoramic views, balconies for the residential units. On the other side, the sloping terraces conversely provide shade for the offices facing the west. These are some renderings by Spur, and it was built during a very idealistic era. And the architects really wanted to create this, make architecture part of the new city, to integrate mixed use, high density modes of transportation. And you see here what they're trying to do is really to create a continuity between buildings along the linear axis. And the game they play here is not dissimilar to what we have at MBS, maybe a precursor to what we have at the hotel side at MBS. And the game we play here is that there must be this space between the vertical core and the underside of the terrace to create this linear axis. And Golden Mile Complex, the plan, it's really those renderings built is as, as true to this kind of conceptual visions as could be. It's really remarkable. But some strange things do happen when it gets realized, such as the parking structure on the east side. And the idea of getting a linear axis through the atrium is carried through, is followed through. If you go to the building, there is a three-story high glass wall. at one side. But what you look out when you look through it from the atrium is that you see a 5-story parking deck of Golden Mile Tower, and that space is currently a loading bay and a refuse chute or refuse center, right? And the other side, you have the same grand glass, same design, right? But it's blocked by itself that before said parking structure. The atrium is lively. It has an enclave character to it. But it feels enclosed and self-sufficient. And I believe the way the space is set up leads to how it's occupied. With both openings choked up and the building being at the tail end of Beach Road, this seems like a good place for a community to make its own sanctuary. This may currently be its charm and character, and I have nothing against it, but I'm not sentimental about it. Because it is clear to me that this enclave character, arising from the incomplete resolution of the original architectural idea, remains a weakness in our case to conserve the building. So what we do with the adjacent plot will have an impact on the future of Golden Mile Complex. It is not actually about the building itself, but what we do next to it that will ensure its future relevance. The solution is really to make a continuous Golden Mile, not a disconnected string of interesting looking objects. I will end with a series of diagrams to show a very simple idea. To drop off the parking structure in a gas station, which as I said was extraneous to the original architectural idea, and anyway these may soon be relics of 20th century transportation. From recent advancements in self-driving, electric cars, ride-hailing, the car park and the gas station may soon become obsolete. So why not? We free up the atrium on this end, set this guideline for the neighbouring development, that the building on the adjacent site will need to incorporate a central thoroughfare, continuous with the atrium of Golden Mile Complex. And it doesn't end there. A 2-story high bridge with programs can be built across the sunken road and onto the riverfront, connecting to another urban network of the park connector, for which Singapore is so successful. If needed, an underground car park can be built in a new site to serve both buildings. This is the map in, 1975, Golden Mile Complex. It's just finished. And in 2009, what has changed? There is now a lot more housing blocks across Beach Road. The coast has moved further from Nickel Highway. The buildings along Beach Road have been filled in, but the Golden Mile project does not seem to be finished yet. I think there is a finale waiting to happen. And this is just a quick proposal. While the coastline has been extended and land has been added for future development, we can still safeguard a green space in front of where the Golden Mile Complex terraces are facing. With the new developments along the coastline, however, the Golden Mile will now need to focus ever more on the lengthwise axis along Beach Road and not to the beachfront frontage, because there will be new, higher, denser buildings there for sure, otherwise why would we reclaim the land? Nickel Highway, nevertheless, remains hard to cross, and therefore the outlet to the waterfront becomes important. Last few slides. Golden Mile Complex can be the heart of a new commercial district, infused with the mark of our nation-building courage and imagination, rejuvenated and integrated with waterfront urban living. This district will be so much more interesting than if it was built on empty land, as it will be a mix of history and new ideas. There will be apartments, shops and offices. This quick proposal shows that the future of Golden Mile Complex, or any other worthy old building in fact, cannot be considered in isolation, but must necessarily be supported by how the neighbouring developments are conceived. So we have now close to 50 years of buildings, a mix of many generations. They stand together, perhaps a little bit uneasy, not sure if they are welcome. It is up to us, intelligent architects and planners, to really stitch them together, to observe them and see how to make sense of them. Because how many more times can we erase and start again? I will end by reading out this concluding message that I wrote. How we act in the period we are in now, between conservation of our modern landmarks and adopting tactics of adaptive reuse to bring out character of existing fabrics while stitching the city together, post-tabula rasa, post-speculative real estate, will define our city and will define us. These two efforts running concurrently will be our mode of resistance, looking back and looking forward at the same time. We are making history every moment. Thank you.